Hey designers, this is Kristen from Cut File Classroom, where I teach you how to design and sell SVG cut files for Cricut, Silhouette, and other cutting machines. In this video, I'm showing you how to make these sweet Cherry SVG files, which are fun for spring and summer designs. If you want to follow along, I'll put a link below where you can download this free Illustrator practice file, which includes this finished Cherry design and the working version I used to create them. First, I'll move these over to the side of the canvas so I have some room on my artboard. Then I'll begin to create my cherry shape by pressing L on my keyboard to bring up the ellipse tool. You can also find the ellipse tool over here in the toolbar. Then I'm going to set a fill color, and I'm going to choose this cherry red color. If you want, you can eyedropper my swatches that are up here. And I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm going to make an oval. It's not a perfect circle, but it's almost a circle with just a little bit of width at the center here. So something like that. And that's going to serve as the base for my cherry shape. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak this top part of the cherry to create a little indent where the stem would be coming out from. Now, if I try to tweak these handles here, you can see that if I pull one side, the other side is also affected, and that's because this is a smooth anchor point right now. So let me just undo that and get back to the original shape. And in order to convert this from a smooth point to a corner point, I'm actually going to press Shift C to bring up the Convert Anchor Point tool. And I'm going to place my mouse right over that anchor point, and I'm going to press Shift as I click right on that anchor point. And now if I come over to one of these handles and drag on it, it can drag freely without affecting the other one. So I just dragged that handle up, and I'm going to do the same on this side of the handle. I'm going to drag it up and see that starts to create this indent here. So we can start to see like a cherry shape starting to form. I want to go a little bit further with this and make the sides of this cherry shape a little bit wider. So I'm using the selection tool, and I'm just going to hover over the center handle here, and I'm going to press Alt or Option on my keyboard as I click and drag away from the center of the cherry, and that's going to let me increase the width of this shape without increasing the height. So I'm just going to drag that out until I get the cherry shape that I want, and once I'm happy, I can let go, and then I can just kind of tweak some of these handles to give it more of the shape that I want. So I think that looks pretty good right there. If you want, you can click on this bottom point and press Shift C, and you can click and drag while pressing Shift to keep your line straight. You can click and drag to kind of bring that not quite to a point, but just to kind of narrow that down at the bottom a little bit. And I think I'm quite happy with that as my cherry shape. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select that shape, and I'm going to press Alt and Shift as I click and drag to make a copy. And I'm going to let go once I have that copy in place. And I'm just going to use the selection tool and hover over the corner of the bounding box as I click and drag a little bit to rotate that. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other cherry. So now I've got my two cherries in place, and I think they look pretty good. And the next thing I'm going to do is add the stems. Let me scroll up a bit. So now I'm ready to add the stems to my cherries, and to do that I'm going to use the pen tool. So I'm going to press P on my keyboard to bring up the pen tool. You can also find it over here in the tool panel. And I'm going to press Shift X to swap my fill and stroke, and then I'm going to click on that stroke box and grab the green color. So when I draw my stem, it comes out green. So I'm just going to click up here, kind of in the center of where these cherries meet, to begin the stem of my cherry. I'm just going to click and drag downward and let go. And then I'm going to move my pen tool down over kind of towards this little indent we created, but I'm going to go a little bit further. And then I'm just going to click and drag down and to the right. And I'm watching that path preview to see how this curve is going to look. And once I think it's in a good spot, I'm just going to let it go. Now, my path has been created and I can go ahead and make this thicker. So I'm going to come to my stroke panel and I'm just going to increase that to, let's see, let's try 18. And I think that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to change the cap to a rounded cap because I like the way that looks better. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of variation to the width of this stroke using the width tool. So I'm going to come over to the tool panel and grab the width tool. And I'm just going to click the top end point and I'm going to click and drag away from the center, and that's going to add a little bit of thickness to my cherry stem. So I think that looks pretty good, and I'm going to make a copy of this stem to create the other one. I could draw it freehand, but I'm just going to make a copy instead. So I'm going to press the O key to bring up the mirror reflect tool, and I'm just going to click once at the top of the stem, and I'm going to press Alt and Shift, and I'm going to click again just a little bit below that point, and that creates a reflected copy of my stem. So now my stems are looking pretty good, and I'm just going to select both of my stems. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Arrange and Send to Back. So now the stems are behind the cherries. The next step I'm going to do is create the leaves coming out of the top of the stem. So I'm going to press L again to bring up the ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw an oval shape. Now right now the stroke of the oval is the same as the stroke that I used on the stem, so it looks a little weird, so don't worry. I'm just going to press Shift X to swap my fill and my stroke. Now I have an oval with a solid fill and no stroke. So now to give this a bit more of a leafy look, I'm going to press Shift C on my keyboard to bring up the Convert Anchor Point tool. And I'm going to click on the two side points of this oval to make those into corner points, and now we can start to see this looking like a leaf. If you want, you can select these center points and you can kind of drag them to one side or the other. You can, kind of play with the direction handles. You can click and drag on a curve to add more of a depth to that curve if you want. It's really up to you. You can kind of just play around and edit these points as you will to create the kind of leaf shape that you want. So I'm pretty happy with that, and now I'm going to make a copy of this and reflect it to make a leaf on the other side. So again, I'm going to select this leaf shape, and I'm going to press O on my keyboard to bring up the reflect tool, and I'm going to click at the top of my stem. I'm going to press Alt and Shift as I click again below that point, and that creates a mirrored copy on the other side. And I'm just going to drag this leaf in towards the stem and just kind of play around with the placement of my leaves until I like the way that they are looking. I think that looks pretty good. So now I'm ready to convert this design into a design that is cuttable, because right now a cutting machine would just cut these lines as slits and you would end up wasting your material. So I'm going to select this whole cherry design, and I'm going to make a copy over to the side so I can always come back to this design anytime I want to make edits. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'm going to select these two stem paths, and I'm going to create outlines from them to turn them into vector shapes. So to do that, I'm going to do Object, Path, Outline Stroke, and now we can see those stroke lines have been turned into actual vector shapes. So the next thing we need to do is to combine all of these overlapping shapes that are the same color, all of these green overlapping shapes. We need to combine them to form a single shape, because a cutting machine would cut all of these overlapping shapes as separate pieces and it would be a nightmare. So I'm going to unite them into a single shape. So in the Pathfinder panel, I'm going to click Unite. If you don't have the Pathfinder panel on your screen, you can come to Window, Pathfinder, and make sure it's checked. And then I'm just going to click the Unite button. And now we can see that all of those overlapping shapes that were selected have now become a single shape that a cutting machine could cut around. When we did that, it brought the leaves and stems to be in front of the cherries again. So I'm just going to go ahead, right click and arrange and send those to the back again. And now I'm just going to do one more thing here, which is these are overlapping shapes as well. And if you were to layer this in vinyl, you would kind of see this piece underneath the top layer of vinyl. And if you were layering this in paper, it would be kind of hard to add enough glue on that little piece of stem for this cherry shape to really grab onto. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create one version for how I would create these cherries for paper and another version of how I would create these for vinyl. So I'm just going to shrink that down so I can fit 2 copies on my artboard. And I'm going to say this version on the right will be for vinyl. So, and then the left one will be for paper. So if I was going to design this cherry to layer with vinyl, I would want to kind of subtract the overlapping parts of this design. So I'm going to select the cherries and the stems where they overlap. And I'm going to come to Pathfinder and I'm going to click trim. And that's going to kind of trim away the parts of the design that overlap, leaving me with perfectly lined up shapes that fit together like a puzzle. So that would make this easy to layer from vinyl. One last step here is I'm going to grab these 2 separate cherry pieces and I'm going to make them a compound path so that they cut correctly when loaded into Cricut Design Space. So I'm going to come up to Object, Compound Path, Make. And that's going to ensure that these 2 cherries stay together when they are cut in Cricut Design Space. So now we can come over to the paper version. And if I was doing this design for paper crafts like cards or cake toppers or something like that, I would want to create a base layer that these cherry shapes could be adhered to, and it would just make things a lot easier. So I'm actually going to select both of these cherry shapes. I'm going to press Command or Control C to copy them. Then I'm going to press Command or Control F to paste them in front so you can see what's happening here. And then I'm going to press Shift as I click on the stems to add those to my selection. So now I have my copied cherries and my stems selected. And I'm going to press Unite on the Pathfinder panel. And we can see that the whole shape has been united. And I'm just going to go ahead and give that a green fill color. And so now this is my base layer that I can glue the cherries on top of. It just makes things a lot easier. So I'm going to send this layer to the back. This is my base layer. And so now it's behind my original cherry shapes. And then I'm just going to group these 2 together. When you're cutting something from paper, it doesn't necessarily need to be made into a compound path because paper is going to cut as individual pieces anyway. But if you want, you could certainly make these into a compound path as well. So there we have it. So I'm just going to select this cherry and I'm going to make it a group. And I've already made this cherry a group. So now both of our cherry cut files are complete and these are ready to save as SVGs to load into Cricut Design Space. If you'd like to learn more about designing SVG files for cutting machines, head over to cutfileclassroom.com and download my free designer's guide to error-free SVGs. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and feel free to drop any questions in the comments below. I also want to hear what you would like to see next, so let me know in the comments and I might just make a video on it. Thanks again, see you next time.